Lecture: Social and Economic Development of Russian Regions, Position of the Republic of Tatarstan. Good afternoon. My name is Natalia Zubarevich. I am a professor at Moscow State University, and the organizers of this event asked me to tell you about the development of the regions of Russian Tatarstan, and compared to the Tatarstan, I have presentation. I'll switch it on and I will try to tell you briefly about what's going on in the country and in the regions of Russia. So we have long-term trends which are quite stable. There are phenomena which are connected with the COVID crisis, and I will talk more about the long-term trends because Russian regions depend on the long-term trends. What we can say, and when we talk that we will develop all together, and we hear it from our federal government, they are theoretically wrong, illiterate. So you cannot develop everything all together equally. Development always is based on the competitive advantages. If you don't have competitive advantages, it's much more difficult. Competitive advantages can be two types. First is what is not created by people, which is created by God. Let's put it this way. We talk about natural resources. And the abundance of these resources facilitate and stimulate investments and everything. Second is a geographical position. If you have a good location, convenient location, you are the hub of the different traffic of from different markets, and you have a lot of markets around you. This is something which changes with history. But the second group of advantages is created by people and states. First of all, this is the agglomerational effect. They are based on when you have a concentration of population and economy. Whatever people do, you get two advantages. First is you get the advantage of scale economy. Your cost go down. And the second, again, very important, but in Russia, unfortunately, it is not understood very well. This is the effect of variety, of diversity. Because diversified economy, each business chooses partners and employees what they need, and people as consumers choose services and goods which they need, and this is an economic advantage. Next, human-made artificial advantage or man-made advantage, investment into the human capital. For many countries, this is the most important because the human capital is a driver of modern economics. Third are so-called rules of the game, and they're called institutes, norms and regulations which rule economy. Sometimes they're good, sometimes bad, sometimes they're horrible. And in this case, they're a very serious obstacle for the economic development and especially development of the human capital. And the last one is infrastructure. You can't do anything without infrastructure. And the more you have factors from the second category, the more sustainable your development is. Okay, let's look at Tatarstan. Natural resources, yes. From subjects of Russian federations, after Khanty-Mansi, Yamal-Nenetsky district, you're on the second or third place on the oil producer. Your oil fields are depleted significantly, but it's okay. Kazan has 1 million people. Kazan got a lot of investment to develop it. Yes. Third, human capital. Let's talk whether it's better than average in the country. Well, we can discuss it. Institutes, yes. The Tatarstan government maximizes the business support as compared to the other regions. It is significant, but there are institutes which are universal for all Russia, which you have to coexist. And here are we see a lot of questions because the rules are the same. Yes, infrastructure, yes, a lot of investment, and yes, it's better than in Russia. So Tatarstan does have competitive advantage. Thanks to this, Tatarstan is in the group of relatively developed regions. Yes, it's not leader. Leaders are very simple. These are Moscow, and the biggest regions like Tyumen region, the more developed than Tatarstan, and Sakhalin. So oil and gas and the capital of the country. So these are the leaders because they are super competitive. But look here, Tatarstan is very stable and it is in the group of the relatively developed regions. It's not jumping up and down. And in this, because the ones which are in the middle, in the majority of Russian regions, and I am just showing you the gross regional product per capita. So the middle is 70–80%, if 100% is average in Russia. Tatarstan, it's close to 140, so significantly high. We are not talking about outsiders, we're talking about poorly developed republics. And this slide of the spread of regions according to the economic development, if you use as an indicator the gross regional product, so there was only one successful region, Sakhalin, when global companies came there and companies invested into region. So Sakhalin became very successful and rich region. Tatarstan cannot compete neither with Moscow, neither with adjacent regions, because it's just big gap. But in its area, it exposes two very important advantages. It has stable economic development because of these two reasons which I mentioned before. What else can we say? What about advantages connected with the human capital? This is, well, we just count people, not quality of people, just a number of people there. And I have to say that in our country, from 2000s, very quickly we see concentration of people in the agglomeration of two biggest federal cities. Because of the mass migration, they get a quality of human capital and quality and quantitative growth. If you look at all other countries, look at the red columns, it's migration. You see that everybody is almost losing people except Tatarstan. All Ural except Tyumen, all Siberia except Tomsk, this is where they have good universities, all far east, all south except, and well, Caucasus, of course, almost all south except regions close to the sea. Crimea, Krasnodar always attracted people because in a cold country, it's not very comfortable to live. It's better to live next to the close, warm climate. Here you see Moscow district, St. Petersburg, Leningrad district, and Kaliningrad. That's it. Tatarstan is still able to attract people on huge territory from Volga to Far East, Tatarstan and Tyumen. It is very important because shrinkage of population of Russia is accelerating because we have less babies and less and less people get on the labor market, but mortality is very high. That is why Tatarstan is still demographically okay. Now, stability and sustainability. What happens there? Because of the super competitive advantages, the main money gravitate to two places, Moscow and Moscow district, which is basically the same thing, and Tyumen because of their situation. This is 2014. Tyumen was a leader with their autonomous districts. 2018 it was 14. In 2019 a little less because they finished infrastructural projects in Yamal, 11, 12. But this is the cycle project. But if you look at Moscow, a share of Moscow, I'm pretty sure yes, it was roughly the same. It's not changing a lot. But share of Moscow grew from 15 to 21 in 2019. 21% means every fifth of ruble, investment ruble in Russia, is investment into the Moscow agglomeration. It is a huge disbalance connected with many reasons. One of them is huge money is invested from the Moscow budget. Moscow is a super rich city, and every fourth ruble is investment ruble. If you take,
If we take the total of investment into Moscow, then you see that every fourth ruble is actually investment from Moscow city budget, and businesses are also investing there because you will have the feedback. Now take a look at Tatarstan. Sustainably, it keeps its 4% of total amount of investment in Russia. In year 2019, somewhat less, about 3.5. When you have such two vacuum cleaners of everything, such as Tyumen, the north of Tyumen, where the largest oil and gas companies are investing, and super investment vacuum cleaner of getting everything out, Moscow, is obviously difficult to compete in this situation. Tatarstan is managing its 3.5%, etc. If you take a look at who else, the share of Tatarstan's investments is close to what St. Petersburg has, the second largest agglomeration. So the fact that you are working hard to get investment attractiveness, bringing investors, is a very big contribution, and that finds its reflection in the statistics as well. Now let's keep on going forward. I would like to take a look at what happens on the part of investment in the population. First of all, we're talking about real estate, housing is being sold. Let's take a look at where people invest money to have their housing. That's the place where people invest is where they want to live. I'm just looking at the crisis period of 15-18. And if we take a look at a longer period, you will see obviously fluctuation. But one general thing that I would like to note here is introduction of new housing per 1,000 of population. All of us know well that at the end of 2000s and the beginning of 2010s, Tatarstan was one of the leaders per square meters introduced per head count. But over time, that advantage is decreasing. You see here is Tatarstan on average for Russia. Yes, you are above average, but let's take a look at who is winning on this contest. The very same areas: Moscow region, Leningrad region. Well, once again, we also have Sevastopol and Tyumensk region, but they are falling down significantly. Tyumen region is getting money for the housing from people living in northern territories. Tatarstan doesn't have that. Krasnodar Krai, the southern part. Yes. So people who want to get housing are concentrating more and more in the largest agglomerations of the country. So Moscow and Moscow region takes 17% of total housing introduced in the country. So we have reached such a super centralization where every 6 square meter of the housing is Moscow capital agglomeration. In that sense, competing with that is very difficult for Tatarstan, because southern regions is where money goes when people are moving for the retirement. As well as centers, Tyumen is probably going to be decreasing, and Kaliningrad is also a pleasant place to live, and people are ready to invest there. Thus, you are facing very rigid competition, and it's not that simple for Tatarstan to keep its positions. Now, let's move further. Another long-term factor. What does income inequality depends on? These are calculations of my colleagues from Higher School of Economics, a statistical calculation of contribution of various factors into income inequality, and the main factor for a long period of time was regionality. What region you belong to, the wages are there. That was the main contribution into eco-inequality. So inequality between Yamal and Pilz and Tambov is clear. Now let's take a look, something worth us considering. Once the demographics program started, beginning somewhere year 2011, 2014, the main factor is having kids. Meaning that once you have second or third child, pushes the family into poverty until state programs start supporting. Yes, the state realized that first it increased the length of subsidies, first until 3 years, then until 7. But the greatest poverty is for families with children between 7 and 16. No stories there how to support them. And if Tatarstan want to become more attractive, you really need to think about supporting families with children. The thing is that, yes, we are in crisis, and probably the region doesn't have much money for that, but that is a key story now if you want territory to become more attractive for residents. Now let's take a look at inequality at wages level, another long-term factor. Here I calculated things in rubles, average per Russia. And taking the average for Russia is 100%. If you take a look that if it's in rubles, then we clearly have super high income generating Moscow, twice higher than around the country. Then you see northern regions, but it's very, very expensive there, everything. Tatarstan is keeping its rubles wages at about 80% of the average. That's quite a challenging situation there. On one side, region with the cheaper labor force is more attractive, investors are coming there. On the other hand, a low level of wages in rubles is a factor that is pushing the population out of the region because people are looking for where they can earn more. If we take a look at St. Petersburg, it's about 1/3 higher than average, and Moscow is twice higher. So let us introduce the concept of price of living in the region. The picture obviously changes very much. Take a look at Tatarstan, the region with the low prices, at least that's what statistics tells us. You see that the ratio of average per capita income to the minimal basket is quite competitive. So the wages that you have allows you to have acceptable level of living on average, but still there are northern regions which are more attractive, Yamal and Nenetsky, Sakhalin at far east. People are not moving there much, except for maybe oil and gas production. St. Petersburg is showing some better figures, and I don't believe Moscow statistics because there truly the ratio is much better than the statistics show. Well, what else? Tatarstan did increase it, improve it very much, because if we take a look at early 2000s, the ratio was 1.5 times worse, but others have improved it as well. So you see there is competition for wages, for attracting population is also very high. Now let's talk about the budget. It's important to note because the budget is the main instrument for influencing your processes. What's happening here? It's important for us to remember that there is a clear factors. For as long as oil is valuable, as long as we are a large oil and gas exporter, That factor leads to the fact that the oil rent from the oil extracting regions is mainly collected at the federal level, which means that the income, the tax on extraction of natural resources goes to the federal level, which is why our tax system is very much uneven. Our country is mainly living off the oil incomes. If we take a look at all incomes that are coming into federal budget, we see that in some regions up to a quarter gets from Khanty-Mansiysk, 12 more process. 10 from Yamal. Moscow is a large consumption center. Tatarstan is contributing 4%. It's sustainable throughout the years. And we see that 10 regions are covering 75% of total federal budget income. And if we take just 3 leading ones, okay, let's add St. Petersburg. Moscow, Yamal, Khanty-Mansiysk, and St. Petersburg. That's over 50% of everything. What does that mean? That means we can't have any tax decentralization. It's impossible. So the key question is, how can that rent that goes into the federal budget is redistributed in the form of transfers? I will come back to it. That question, but let's continue. Now, how can we identify this inequality of taxable base? Rather simple, general figures. If we take a look at all taxes collected, 55 goes to federal budget and 45 stays in the region. But take a look at the differences. I'm just showing you Tatarstan with everything. You are getting just 1/3. Everything else goes to the federal level. But Khanty-Mansiysk gets what? 9%. So 2/3 of regions of Russia are keeping from 60 to 100%. And no decentralization will help them. In their case, almost everything is staying at their territory. So once again, there is no simple solution to this colossal inequality of taxable base. Once again, in case of Tatarstan, only 1/3 is staying there. Everything else goes to the federal level. In that sense, you are close to Samara Oblast, Tomsk Oblast, etc. So you are among those who are feeding Russia, federal budget. Not, of course, such as Khanty-Mansiysk, they are giving more. Now, how do those strong regions live? What do they have and what stays there? And how do weaker ones live? Here is the structure of income, the tax incomes that go to the budget of the Federation. And we see that strong regions mainly live off the profit tax, blue, and they have a rather large share of personal income taxes. So these are the regions that are mainly earning their living, of course, various excises, etc. And in gray, you see what is transferred. And part of the regions are receiving subsidy dependent, up to a quarter, some to 50, some to 85%. When we are living in such a country, the budget rules have to be very well thought through. Yes, the weak ones have to be supported, but if you keep on feeding them always, why do they need to develop? Because they will get those subsidies one or other. Yes, the strong ones do have their incomes, but the profit tax is most volatile. As soon as you you enter crisis regions, that hits the regions that are profit tax dependent. Thus, if I have drawn the picture differently, for a number of years for you to see how stable that is. If we take a look at that structure, we see that in the republics of Northern Caucasus, part of the Chechnya and Ingushetia, they are receiving over than 80% of their regional income is subsidies. In case of Tiva, over 70%. Chukotka is very much subsidy dependent. That's a separate story. Why that way? So we see that those who are at the highest subsidy or have highest dependency on subsidies, nothing changes there. While the regions that are earning themselves, they are not getting very high level of subsidies. And it's clear that in Moscow they're getting, 4%. In case of Tatarstan is somewhat over 10%. Those are very low ratios. But it means that if you are forced to fund yourself of your income, you are putting the risks on the federal budget. Who benefits best in Russia? Let's take a look at the subsidies. The greatest subsidies go to Far East. It was very much successful. Second, are the republics of Northern Caucasus. They would be fed forever, no options. And third one is the geopolitical priority, Crimea and Sevastopol. Things got decreased a little bit lately, so other regions are getting more. That's how it's organized. Why? I don't know. Why is that share such a big share going there? Because these are not just low developed regions. That's what we have about the federal policy about the development. So what happens as a result? What regions have money? Once again, Tatarstan is mainly self-dependent. Of course, they are getting some subsidies, but still it's a region that's much less dependent. Earlier, they were getting more support of subsidies, much less in 2019. What? Yes, you can't take away anything from Moscow. There is certain correction. Is their on average income is 2.5 higher per capita income than everywhere else in the country. In St. Petersburg, it is 60%. In Kaliningrad, they are receiving a lot to support the special economic zone, special priority. Why? I don't know. I know that once you entered WTO, you couldn't support them the old ways. So the federal budget is using other interbudgetary transfers. Tyumen's region, Yamal and Khanty-Mansiysk okrug. Those started, things are somewhat better, but still taking on, as well as Sakhalin. So once again, as I told you, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Crimea, Tyumen, and Sakhalin, you can't take away from them. That's profit income. But at the same time, why the Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kaliningrad, Tyumen, Sakhalin, etc., but the Crimea and Sevastopol, why on average their incomes are higher than everywhere in the country? Why? That's because of geopolitics. Tatarstan, that is earning its own living, is somewhat above the average around the country. If you take a look at Chechnya, nearby you, they are almost 90%, whilst in Tatarstan, on average, it's 5% higher than average. Where is Tatarstan and where is Chechnya? Why is that distribution? Well, the answer is, it is decided that way for Russia. And so this effect, until it works that way, it will not incentivizing weak regions to develop and incentivizing strong regions not to develop. I guess the last thing I wanted to tell you, that you will of course have an important event. I understand that you need to have positive emotions. I do hope so. We are frankly living in very difficult times of large and serious crisis. I'm just giving you some figures that allow you to compare how Tatarstan overcomes it, how it deals with this against the background of whole of the country. And that's not only COVID, but this is also a very large decrease in the global demand for our export products, decrease in prices for oil and gas, in principle, and second is the decrease in the internal demand, so that reflects bad on the automotive structure, etc. Lockdown per se has killed market services because those were closed, whilst the decrease in the demand is a much longer influence. How would the world economy be coming back? Most likely it will be developing slowly. How will you be increasing your domestic income when the income decrease of the regions decreased by 8%? Take a look everywhere. Industrial decrease in the country 9-10%, and the same thing is true in Tatarstan. Export economy, as well as youth economy that are as well as the economy that is satisfying domestic income, same thing. Introduction of housing, January to June, went down by 11%, even before coronavirus. There are many factors, decisions that were decided, such decisions as escrow accounts, etc.
5% less. What else? The services. Services, that's all what we do. Utility payments, hairdressers, barber store, whatever we pay from your own money, from your own pocket. And so we stopped COVID limitations, and what happened in Russian average? Almost no changes. 35% drop in Tatarstan, a little bit better. So in June, -22, better than average in the country. Maybe you just more assistance and help to the small and medium business. If so, that's good. Then official unemployment, you have to live with that for some time. But in the country, it grew 3.5 times, and you in your 4 times, because originally you had smaller. Nevertheless, still 3% unemployment is quite a lot, so you have to support a lot, not just pay dole, but just to help people, retrain people. Well, you knew how to do it before, so you'll cope with that. What is, for me, the most risky? About Tatarstan. All strong regions, when crisis begins, they all feel it immediately because of the budget income. For 3 months, April, May, and June, your own tax income in consolidated regional budgets dropped in 20%. Tatarstan 27%. So these are the risks of the strong regions. And here they are now. They show themselves. They showed up. Problem with the money. June and April drop was compensated by the federal budget transfer. 19 billion rubles. Well, not shabby. So you got it for 3 months, and it was compensated completely, all the drop. But at the same time, you increased your expenses in 90%. Because it's Ministry of Healthcare, you had to fulfill requirements of the national projects. Your social expenditures grew. Result: strong regions now have budget deficit, and your budget deficits are the biggest in the country. For the first 6 months, 18%, because your expenditures grew significantly. And now there is time X has come. How will regions restructure their budget policy, their budget management policy? Either you have deficit, you are strong, you can go to the market and borrow money, but you already had story with the big debt. And now it is a very tense time for correct managerial decisions. Coming to the end of my conversation, I talked about crisis. What you have to do. I'll begin with the simplest thing without which development progress is impossible. Decrease the risks for the business. I know precisely that Tatarstan is trying to help businesses which reside in this area. Tatarstan tries to protect these businesses, including foreign businesses. That is why the main task of the federal government, that for Tatarstan it will not be easy to support good investment climate. Second, independence of regions. The vertical management structure is not efficient. You have to have it as a slogan everywhere. Economically, it is not efficient. It is not plausible. It is for control, but it's not for the development. If you want to increase efficiency of the regions, look at the regions which can develop and manage themselves. Do not spend the money for help as you do it. You have to have a transparent system of budget transfer from federal money. To make the subsidies should be up to 50% minimum, so that regions understand what they get. And there won't be any situations when, like for example, for 3 months your income in the budget dropped 19 billions and you got 19 billions. Chechen lost 600 million, but it got 6 billion rubles. And one more thing is, do not be too meticulous in your control. So 100 subsidies were given to regions, and these are just every region tries to control everything. If you give you money, tell us precisely how you spend this money. You have to move to the bigger subsidies from federal budget. In spite of everything which I told you, Tatarstan now shows sustainable extraction of investments. It's quite turbulent time, not easy, but it's not the first crisis in our economic history. And so I wish you to overcome these turbulent times, to overcome it with the minimum losses. I wish you to continue supporting your regional economy, which helps Tatarstan to keep its place of one of the most regions in Russia.